Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name.
Former FBI agent Kyle Seraphin, who recently received a letter from the FBI saying, be quiet about this. Kyle, welcome to the show. You're not following orders.
So, Kyle, you had some issues that brought you here as a whistleblower. Joining me now to discuss is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Kyle, thanks for spending some time with us again. Joining me now is FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin. Joining me now is a frequent guest of the show, former FBI special agent whistleblower as well, Kyle Seraphin.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Right, we're lucky to have him with us today. He's Kyle Seraphin, a real whistleblower himself.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Why did you decide to become a whistleblower?
I just made a decision that this is America's information, it's not mine, and I'm not going to let the FBI steamroll me and my family.
Kyle Seraphin, he's a former FBI agent. He's the host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Kyle. Great to have you back with us, sir.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kyle Seraphin.
Let's turn it over to two former FBI special agents turned whistleblowers who are holding the Bureau accountable, Steve Friend and Kyle Seraphin.
A brave FBI whistleblower who is a friend of our show, also Dan Bongino's, Kyle Seraphin. He's the host of something that strangely is called The Kyle Seraphin Show. Follow him on Twitter. I'm Sebastian Gorka. I'll call you later. We'll talk guns. We'll talk optics.
All right. Any update on your whistleblower situation?
No, I expect to be attacked for the foreseeable future.
Okay. At least you're realistic. Thanks so much, Kyle.
All right. Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, also host of the Kyle Seraphin podcast. Thanks as always, Kyle. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Perfect, man. God bless you, brother. Thank you for standing up for the truth, man. Thank you for coming on.
Steve, Kyle, you guys are great Americans, and it's an honor to have you on the program. Have a great weekend.
And follow him, Kyle Seraphin, with a PH on Twitter. God bless you, Kyle. This is
Well, so Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. Great chatting with you.
Kyle Seraphin, thank you.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. It looks like I got a little something in my throat right now. It is Wednesday, September the 13th. I want to welcome you to a midweek show. I think we're going to have a good time here. We've got an excellent guest that we are going to ask some questions about coverage of January 6th. I think there's a story in both the what's going on and what's happened with the defendants, but also in the process of covering it. I think people that have been involved in this have learned things along the way, and they are starting to piece together more and more of it, but it is an onion that has many, many layers. So stick around. We're going to be talking to Mel Hawley in just a moment here. I want to say thanks to our sponsors so we don't get interrupted with any of that. Let's say first, thanks to our buddy Garrett O'Boyle. This is our merch store. This is the-suspendables.com. You guys can go there, check out the t-shirts, check out he's getting some hats, and we've got some lapel pins. I'll be wearing those soon whenever I do interviews on the bigger stations. So check them out, the-suspendables.com. And always a big thank you to our friends over at Catholic Vote, America's top Catholic organization in the fight for faith, freedom, and family. Put your email in there, get the loop. It is a fantastic email. You guys will learn something every day. I assure you of that one. And then lastly, I want to say a big thanks to Patriot Coolers, our OG sponsors. You just saw a tweet about them today. If you're following our Twitter channel, go to patriotcoolers.com, use promo code Kyle, Kyle. That gets you 10% off. Showing right there is the Veterans and First Responders collection. They've got stuff for everybody who's a cop, who's a firefighter, who's an EMS worker in your life. They've got some really nice branded gear, American flags with like firefighter axes and so on, the EMS symbol. Good quality stuff. It's all laser etched in there, and they are really good people. There's one. There's Ryan's right there. That's his patriotic Tumblr. Again, promo code Kyle when you go to patriotcoolers.com. Big thanks to them. All right, let's launch right into this. Mel and I have been holding you guys up. We were doing some tech difficulties. Ryan and I troubleshooting, so we don't have any of the problems from before. So Mel, welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. There she is. And can you hear us? She can't hear us.
Must not be able to hear us. That's crazy.
She knows she can't hear us, and we know that she can't hear us.
Now I can hear you.
Now you can. Okay, Ryan, is that on your end, or is that going to be just tech difficulties?
I see. I mean, she's got yellow bars, so she didn't have service there for a second. I don't know. I can't tell you, Kyle. It's really strange. It shouldn't be like that.
Okay, we're going to carry on. Mel, can you hear us at the moment?
I can, yes.
All right, let's see how this goes, and if we need to, we will do a little pause, and I will give you a phone number, and we'll just do this over the phone, because we can do that too.
Okay, yeah. I'm hardwired, so, but
okay.
You know.
We tickle the wrong wires too.
Again.
Oh, fantastic. Ryan, will you send her the phone number, and we'll just do this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Will you text it to me right now? I'll get it to her.
I just did a second ago.
Gotcha.
I'll do it again. Yep. All right, folks, bear with us just a moment. I'll talk for a moment and kind of get some of the things that led me to bringing this thing up. We are troubleshooting this stuff in real time. I don't know if we're actually having just a hardwire issue or if we're having a an outside situation, but we will carry on. Let me tell you a little bit about what Mel's reporting has been that brought me to speaking with her. So we had a mutual guest, a friend whose name is Sean Witzman. He came on and spoke to us about January 6th stuff. Many of you guys will remember. It was one of my favorite interviews that I've done so far. He has a website right now that's called 1776 Returns, 1776returns.com. And on there, he is publishing things that he has written and things that some other writers have done. Now, the thing that caught my attention was this picture. It's a response to an article that was written by the Gateway Pundit. And Gateway Pundit is an interesting organization because they have some maybe light editing. It seems like Jim Hoft is able to put a lot of information out simply because they are, Ryan, we can see your whole screen, buddy. If you can see that. They put out a lot of reporting that may be sort of minimally checked. It's just like it's on the writers to be able to justify what they're doing. So in this particular article, we got the questions that come from the questions that are being asked by the headline that was put out by Jim Hoft and those over at Gateway Pundit. The original headline was a national disgrace. These are pictures that were leaked and people, quote unquote, leaked, I'm going to say, of Ryan Samsell, rather, who is a J6 defendant who's got an interesting past. And that's why we wanted to have Mel to come and kind of illuminate what she knows about it. But moreover, it is one of these it's one of these stories where the visual is one thing and the story behind it might be something totally separate. And Mel, if you can hear us, we're trying to get you to call us in here because your wiring is not working on your end. So we're going to try to put you in on our phone line. And Ryan, what's the status with that?
Should be ringing. I just got off the phone with her. She's calling you right now.
Okay, good deal. So we'll just hold 1 second here, folks.
She'll be there in 1 second.
Fair enough. So that picture, if you want to put it up again, we got some real questions of it. For any of you who have ever seen what a prison cell looks like, it doesn't look like that. That's apparently a closet. And apparently he had a nice little yoga mat to sleep on there. Was supposedly thrown away naked. And here we go. All right. Mel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, probably leave this.
And Ryan, we got a feedback loop.
I got her. I'm just gonna mute her in the stream so she can good. All right, so she should be good now.
Okay. Are you hearing that beeping? All I have a beep.
No, she shouldn't be in the stream now. Yeah, she can just leave the stream. Just have her leave the stream.
You can just close out on the audio. We're gonna put a photo of you up, Mel.
Okay.
All right, there we go. All right, Ryan's gonna throw a photo. Yeah. Fantastic. Mel, you can hear me. I can hear you. This is gonna be the most important part of the conversation, folks. This is a new problem for us. So we appreciate you guys bearing with us. All right, Mel. So first of all, tell me who you are, where you came from, and then we'll get into why you started covering January 6th stuff.
Okay, great. Well, I have, I'm a mom of 8, Catholic. That's why I'm a mom of 8.
Yes.
And I was just a mom playing on Twitter like 3 years ago. And, but I've always been, a patriot. I did have a little bit of a following on Facebook. And I ended up working for a podcaster, and we had a media team that was going to go to the Capitol on January 6th. And we were just going to, send back live stream videos that we took and pictures to this podcaster who was going to be live streaming it. And, I'll tell you, it was when I left the Capitol that day and I was riding home, and I left about 3, so I wasn't there, into the evening or anything. But it turned on the radio and heard what they were saying. And I looked at my friend that I rode in with, and I said, "This isn't what I just experienced. This is not okay." And I had only posted one personal picture to Facebook from my day, and I went on Facebook and I said, "I'm going to go take that picture down because something's just not right here." And so I had a big interest in it. I was following any stories I heard about people being arrested. I was hearing about, I live in Virginia, and I was hearing about people being arrested here in Virginia and being raided, their children being taken out 5 o'clock in the morning in pajamas and freezing cold weather. And, I just started following this and found my way into the community through other January 6th defendants. And then come September of 2021, I had a couple of agents show up at my house, and they questioned me for about 30 minutes. And something just didn't seem right about it either. I wasn't even sure that they were actually federal agents. They showed me badges.
What do the badges look like?
Well, they were, if I remember correctly, they were just metal badges inside of some kind of, leather or plastic or whatever. I don't remember that well. I wasn't really thinking about it at the time.
Were they very small badges?
No, they were not really small.
Okay.
And anyway, so they were attractive 30-something couple. But she had a pierced nose and he had a beard. And I thought, I didn't think federal agents were allowed to look like that. I thought they, had some pretty strict rules about what they had to look like. And so when they were getting ready to leave, I said, do you have a card? And they said, no, we don't carry cards. It's not safe. They said, you can see our badges again. And actually, when they first got there, I said, the first thing I said was, I was there as media. Do you want to see my media badge? And they said, yes. I went and got it. They took pictures. But they pulled out their badge again, or he did, and said, you can see our badges. I said, can I take a picture? And they said, no, and put it away. And then they said, you can call the Washington field office to verify. And our names are Jason and Olivia. And I'm thinking, wait, your first name is supposed to be Special Agent. Why are you giving me first names? This is insane. So, they said, is it okay, if we contact you again? And I said, I guess. And so I immediately got an attorney involved. And both the attorney and I called this field office and were laughed at for suggesting that they could verify that agents were at my house by giving first names. And that's when we kind of started putting together, they're pulling agents off of everything. It's very possible that these were undercover agents. And that's why they're used to just giving their first name. And that's why she had a pierced nose and he had a beard. And, does that sound feasible to you, Kyle, that that's what that was?
Not really. It sounds like they were just FBI agents. They don't know how to talk to people, which we keep seeing. I actually just shared something on Twitter this morning. people that are out of shape, people that are slovenly dressed, people that don't know how to deal with the public, don't know how to identify themselves, think that it's scary or that they are secret agents or something like that. I used to joke. I used to work at the Washington field office. I was there 5 years. I probably can find out who Jason and Olivia are. That's probably like 3 phone calls for me. So I'll
yeah, I do have their full names now because they came back 2 months later, and when they came back, same couple.
I don't want to cut you off. I just want you to understand that that FBI agents, the assumption is that you're going to see somebody in a suit and a tie. They're going to come knock on your door. They're going to present credentials the way Fox Mulder and Dana Scully used to on the X-Files. And they're going to have a conversation with you that is going to be intelligent people asking intelligent questions. And what we have now, and I hate to use the term, but they're kind of like social retards. I had so many new agents come out of the field that had never knocked on a door before and talked to a stranger. And so you're much better off having a background in sales and corporate sales than you are having a background in whatever it is that they're hiring people into. And there's a lot of these people that just they act weird. They literally have a rule at the academy. Don't be weird. That's what they try to tell people when they teach them how to talk. And you obviously experience the opposite of that. The idea that a female would have a nose piercing is not crazy. I obviously have a beard. Just for your awareness, and I'm going to let you just run wild for a second here. But my first sort of mentor within my squad told me that I need to grow a beard because it's the last FU to management that they can't make us stop. So that's why I grew a beard, and I've grown a beard ever since. And anyway, it's not the FBI that you think it is, though, and I think that's a really important part of your story because it's not what you expect, and it's very weird.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It really was, and
I can only imagine being on the other end of it too.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. So when they came back, I said, "You can talk to my attorney," and they said, "Well, what? You said we could come back," and I said, "Things have changed." And so after that, I did only converse with them through my attorney, and they wanted to know if they could interview me. I said, sure, why not? So I sat down with them at the FBI office in Manassas, Virginia, and had a little conversation there. It was interesting. You had to go through a little security office there. I don't know if you've been to that office, Kyle. But
I used to work out of it. Yep.
Did you? Okay. So there's a little outside security building that you have to go through to get in, and at the time they were requiring masking, so I had a mask that was the American flag, and so I put the mask on upside down, and the screener out there he looked at me as we went through security, and he said, "Your mask is on upside down." I said, "Yeah, I know."
You said our country is in duress right now. It's under duress.
Yeah. That's intentional.
Was the screener an Indian man? They have a bunch of contractors. Those aren't FBI employees, from what I remember.
No, it was a black man. Okay. Yeah.
They had a couple of people that were working there that didn't speak English as a first language. I always thought that was really fun. I was like, I'm glad they're keeping us safe.
Yeah. Yes.
Contract
that
company.
Makes a lot of sense.
Whack and Hut or something.
Right.
Okay, so you went into the field office, or that's called the resident agency out in Manassas. That's part of the Washington field. You probably know that. And so you sat down. You went through the visitor entrance, is what we call that side, as you drive in and then drive into the right and pull in through that little lot there and walk in through the visitor, and they screen you and do the metal detector and all that kind of thing. So then somebody came and met you there and walked you into the building.
Yeah, these two agents did, and they met my attorney and myself, and we walked in and went to some little interview room there on the first floor. And this was after 4:00 in the afternoon. So this was kind of, after hours, people had gone home, so it was pretty quiet in there. And, they made it pretty clear that they were not going to charge me. Just the way they acted, they were very, they said, you can leave at any time. There were just different things that they said, and so they interviewed me. They asked me about my my day there, and their focus was who was planning this, who was coordinating this. They went on and on about that, and I was just going, "What? We're just a bunch of patriots going to use our free speech."
Right.
And so at the end of it, they did ask me if they could have my video coverage from that day, and I said sure. They've got it all anyway. I mean, I'm not turning anybody in.
It's all been published.
It's all out there, and again, they said, "Is there anything incriminating?" And my attorney said, "Well, I've watched it twice, and unless you're going to try to arrest the 200 people who breached the bike racks at the bottom of the scaffolding there. Little did we know that yes, indeed, they would like to arrest the 200 people that breached that.
Was that shocking when you started finding that out?
When I found what out?
That they were going to go after the people on the bike racks?
Right? I mean, yeah. I mean, because they keep telling us, we're still going after 1,500 more. And I said, there is some incriminating stuff in there. I said, I've got video of the police officers opening the scaffolding door, talking to us and letting us all in. That's incriminating. You want that? So, they've never gone on to charge me, thankfully. But I feel their presence. I know they're listening to me, and in fact, my interviews, I've interviewed. Since then, I've gone on to cover as a podcaster. My whole focus has been January 6th, completely for the past year, and before that, I was, it was mostly January 6th. So, I've gotten to know a lot of these people, a lot of these families, and it's pretty much been my whole life, to be honest, because,
I want to dig into that, and I want to understand a little bit more about that. So I put my toe in the water because somebody asked me if I would interview the 5 Proud Boys who were just sentenced, and if the answer is, of course, yes, I'm happy to take that phone call and do that interview, and we did. And the amount of online hate and vitriol that has happened, particularly on Twitter, that's the biggest place for it, but also even on True Social, which is the 2 platforms I use the most. It's pretty astounding, actually, and it's kind of disgusting that America has gotten to the point where people are so mad about something that didn't affect them. What do you think the emotional trigger is for people that are mad at and about the J6 defendants?
Donald Trump.
It's connection to Donald Trump. It's just that irrationality.
Yeah, I really think it is. It's the Trump derangement syndrome, and it carries over into anything that the media tells them is connected to Donald Trump.
How did people get so crazy about Donald Trump? You've been watching this the same way I did. Did you have any sense that, like, when he was running, could you have ever imagined how mad people would be about this guy?
No, I couldn't. And it's just it's fed by the media. I mean, they don't like their feelers getting hurt, and he says mean things, and they're told that he's a really, really bad guy, and they eat it up. They believe it. They want to have some anger somewhere, so that's where they direct it. And then, we're the maggots, and they got to go after us as well. And it's so hard to watch.
Yeah, how do you deal with that?
I try to just like ignore it. Once in a while, I get sucked in, and I actually start conversing with these people online, and I'm like, what am I doing? There's no reason for this. This is just it's pointless, and it does nothing. It does nothing to move anything forward in the right direction.
It's certainly not productive conversation. It is monetized engagement in my case, so I just sort of mute them and let them tire themselves out, I guess. But it's really wild how just vile people will be. There's a guy out there right now, this is kind of unrelated, but it's fun for conversation, that is accusing me, and I put accusing in air quotes, he's accusing me of being a trucker. I don't know what the allegation means. Like, I don't know why that's an allegation for anybody, but he accused me of being a trucker and being sad. And I was like, yeah, it'd be cool if you could do a podcast from a truck. I would do that. That would be really fun. But I do a podcast from a hardwired location with a studio every day. I don't know what you're talking about. It's so strange, but they just get out there in the world. They've created these fantasy, threats, and you're one of them and I'm one of them. And then they get really mad about it. It's so strange. It's just a weird time to be alive. Let's talk about, as you've started digging into this animal of January 6th, as you and our mutual friend Sean, I think Sean, he said you've interviewed more J6ers than anybody except the FBI. Does that sound true?
That is true.
Okay.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
And maybe more than the FBI, because the FBI doesn't interview some people. They just knock down their door at 6 a.m.
Yes, I agree. It's funny, and continuing actually in the line of the trolls, I have these people tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and that they know what January 6th really was about, and even when I say, have you looked at my profile? Do you realize that, this is my line of expertise, and not only from, first from being there myself, but from, interviewing all of these people and watching all of this video and, just being connected to all the different people who are on the front lines fighting for this. And then they still think that I don't know what I'm talking about. So then I just move along. But it's kind of crazy. It really is.
Do you remember the concept of the Gnostics? They were like a Christian sort of heretical sect early on in the church. They had secret knowledge. That was sort of the hallmark of it. There's a lot of Gnostics out there about January 6th. They know more than you do, and they can't tell you why.
No, they can't. But they know.
But they know that you're wrong.
It's because the media told them.
That's right.
And
they've got the secret the secret CNN pass.
Yes, and there is a video montage that the government introduces as evidence into every single one of these cases, and it's just all of the violence on the west side of the Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
So even if people were on the east side, they were at the Columbo stores the whole time. They never even went on the west side. The government still enters this video montage of all the violence on the west side of the Capitol in every single one of these trials. And, it's just despicable. But I think that video is probably what they took and gave to all the mainstream media on January 6th, and that they continued to show on loop, on all of these channels for weeks, and still, if they need to go to it, they'll go to it. But it's crazy. It really is.
For me, what's been really shocking is seeing the difference between what happened in D.C. and Portland and Minneapolis and many of the other cities. Dallas had some. I know Los Angeles had riots over George Floyd, and some of them I was in, and some of them I just saw on TV. But they were hundreds of angles and thousands of random different people in it. And then the fixation was never that. It was always the 2-3 hours that was rowdy outside the Capitol, where things, it sounded like they got pretty hairy, but it wasn't for half the year. I don't know. It's just
no. Yeah, and I mean, my go-to is just the media coverage of the what went down in D.C. with the White House and all the burning that was going on. I mean, that was wild. But we don't hear anything about that.
So you're in the Virginia area. That would have been local news for you, right?
Pretty much.
What do you remember hearing about that going through in the summer of 2020?
I'm not. I'm an hour from DC, so it's not extremely local. But I was living in Manassas at the time, and there were some riots going on. They came to Manassas. And they were not far from where I lived. And that was pretty scary, actually, that they brought it there. And they have, and it's very political. They have really tried hard to turn Prince William County and Manassas blue.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened quickly. There were literally billboards 15 years ago down in Mexico. There were literally billboards that said, "Come to Manassas." And they were trying to bring as many into Manassas as they could. It got so bad that they had to try to change the zoning. They had houses that were being rented out room by room to families. I knew people who had their own children. I mean, they were not friends, but they lived in the neighborhood, and my kids knew their kids, who these kids didn't even have a bedroom of their own because their families were renting these rooms out to make money to all of these Hispanic families that had come in across the border. So they ended up being successful in pretty much turning Manassas blue, which is pretty crazy because Manassas got a huge conservative Catholic population that lives there, very devout Catholics, and to be able to bring in all of this, I don't know, just a wave of Democrats basically to change the politics there. It's really unbelievable that this can happen so quickly, but it did. So
I did a lot of surveillance cases in Woodbridge. I did a lot of them in Manassas. We were all in and around that area. There's a lot of PW County that we were dealing with. So pretty familiar stomping grounds for me. And they definitely did that. There was a lot of MS-13. There was a lot of fentanyl and all these kind of things that were going on from the time that I started doing that. Very bizarre. And once again, contrasted with what happened on January 6th as, the threat to our democracy, which I cannot handle the democracy over and over again. It's so hard.
It is. It's hard. It's really hard to hear.
Okay. So as you've been covering January 6th, are there different baskets of types of people that are involved in this? Are there different kinds of human beings that were wrapped up in the FBI arrests and the sort of the gulag treatment?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I went in this just with the whole feeling of, all of these people are innocent victims, and this is so terrible. I can't believe this is happening. And it's actually a really good thing that we have this January 6th community where we've got all of these different peoples and all these different organizations, all of these different family members, just people that are advocating and working on the front lines to really get a better feel for what's going on. And you brought up the article I did about Ryan Samsall.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really tough one, because I've been advocating for this guy for a year and a half. And he had a pretty big story. He started off in the DC gulag, the DC jail, and suffered some pretty severe injuries apparently at the hands of the guards there.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved him out, and then he ended up in I can't remember if he went directly to Northern Neck Regional Jail, which is in Warsaw, Virginia, or if he went anywhere else before he got there. But he supposedly was strapped into a chair there and viciously beaten a couple of times there as well. And then they moved him to Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's once he was in Philly is where I ended up hearing about him through a letter that a woman who is she's a widow farmer in Kansas.
How did she connect to him?
She was writing to all of these people.
Is this the Patriot Mail Project or something to that effect? That was.
Yes. So Patriot Mail Project, it connects people so that they can write letters to all of the defendants.
Mm-hmm. And
she received a letter from Ryan, and she got in touch with us, and I eventually ended up getting in touch with Ryan, and I've been advocating for him for about the past year and a half, putting out his Gibson Go, getting people, as he requested, to write to his judge and request this medical attention that he says he needs desperately, that he's not getting. And so we've learned a lot about prisons through this too. So if these guys, when they're not in the DC jail, when they're in, Bureau of Prisons jails, in other locations, they're just part of the general population there. And one of the things that is a little a racket, we're all aware of, the drugs being sold and all that sort of thing, but cell phones are a thing too.
Yep.
So I started getting phone calls and texts from different phone numbers claiming to be Ryan and actually claiming to be a couple of the other inmates too. And I was like, what in the world is going on?
What in the world is going on?
Yeah. So they can get these cell phones, and having talked to some of the other guys, I've been told that they sometimes are brought in by drones and dropped into the yard.
Sure.
Apparently there's big money in that. You can get like $15,000 for flying in, a bunch of phones and drugs, whatever, to these prisons. And it costs about $2,000 to get yourself a phone. But then, of course, if your cell gets turned over by the guards, they're going to take that $2,000 phone. So that's never good for them.
Operational risk.
But that's right, operational risk. But you can also just rent these phones by the hour. So that's what a lot of these guys do. And they would, I'd have them telling me, well, I get the phone every day at 2, so I can call you at 2.
Yeah. And they're calling from their cells.
They're calling from their cells and their cell phones. And it's a racket inside. This is what they do.
What do you think about that? Like, it obviously gives you access to prisoners, which we wouldn't have otherwise. There's something interesting about that. How do you square all this kind of stuff? Because it's against policy for sure. It might be against the law. It might be against the federal law now that I think about it. I haven't looked at the law, but I know there's certain things that are listed as contraband. I know the drugs part are, and there's some other things that are contraband.
I don't know. It's been great to be able to get these interviews and to get more information. And, and then these guys, they have access to the internet, which they normally don't, which can be pretty scary because they could be doing a lot of nefarious things.
Like what? You think?
I mean, gosh, I don't know. I mean, there's so much that they could do. I don't even know because I don't live that kind of lifestyle. But they could be, creating roles. They could be becoming people online. I don't know. They could do a lot of things.
They could generate social media. We're talking about they could be creating campaigns. They could be running disinformation or positive information about their case or something like that. So they
could be harassing people that they're not allowed to be in touch with. There's just so many things.
Yeah, those are. I mean, we'd have to spend probably a whole day sitting there and scheming out on the pros and cons list. Like you say, the pro is you get to hear some direct firsthand sourcing, which is not always the case, and you don't have to go to the prison to do it. So that's great. But right. I wonder what you're involved in with that. Okay, so the basket. Some of these people are obviously less reputable in the J6 defendant group. We're starting to see some of that. When did you first become aware of that?
Okay, so I started. There were some things along the way that I thought, I'm not so sure this is 100%, but, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because, look what they're going through. But the torture, the abuse, just being locked up for so long, everything that's going on. And so then I was put in touch with, so Ryan put me in touch with another inmate. And he explained that there was this story that, this guy saved him because he wasn't being taken care of. And this young black man, because there's a mostly black population in there. Ryan's not black. And so to be accepted into this, population and everything to be cool. And, he had to have this guy on his side. And the guy, says he's, helps out Ryan and makes sure he's safe in there. And then Ryan helps him out because of some kind of issue he had. And so, he wants to put out this story. He wants me to help get this story out that, this young black man inside, he's pro-Trump too. And he saved Ryan. And what a great story this is. And so he gets the kid on the phone with me, and I say, kid, this guy's, I think he's like 20 years old, and he's in there, some kind of involvement in the George Floyd protest riot. And so, I talked to this guy for a minute, but then he hangs up, and then he calls back a little while later away from Ryan, and he's like, Ryan's trying to get me to tell this story in a way that the story didn't really happen. And I don't want to lie. And so I'm not going to put the story out there that way. Ryan's putting this twist on it to try to make money. So all of this is about a grift. So, look at the fact that a phone in there is $2,000. And these people are raising money saying, help me. I need it for my legal defense. I need it for my family at home. I need it for, medical expense. And at one point he tells the audience, my audience, that, the judge has finally said that I can get these surgeries, these medical appointments I need, but I'm going to have to pay for them myself.
There's no
that's
way.
That's not a thing.
No, that is not a thing. Once the Bureau of Prison owns you, they're responsible as well. And so did you know that was BS right away?
I thought that was a little strange.
What do you do when you've got somebody that is lying to you and you're interviewing them on your podcast? How does that work for you?
I'll tell you, my show, I've always said it's a platform for their voices. Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it, regardless of how large my audience is now, I feel like what I'm doing is an historical record of their truth. Because, we know there's your truth, there's my truth, and there's the truth. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot looking back that I now know is not true, that people have said in these interviews. And I've actually had people come back to me and say, I want to retract that. And I'm like, I can't retract it. It's the internet's out, it's forever. It's out there.
That's right.
If you want to come back.
Whether you're running for a Virginia State House and you put pornography or you say something on a podcast, they stay out there forever.
Exactly. So, I'm like, you can come back on and we can do another interview. Mm-hmm. But, I can't, get rid of that. It's there. But yeah, so, I've come to learn along the way that, I just say, my platform is for your voices. So there are a lot of stories out there that probably aren't 100% true, but there are a lot of these defendants that I 100% trust. And I know they're good, honest people. But there's some sketchy ones too. And, a lot of these people have pretty serious criminal backgrounds.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Or does that burn your credibility with their ability to come and talk to you?
Well, I'll just say that there's men in the DC jail, in the DC gulag, who have felonies, who did 10 years in prison for killing someone, for having a meth lab. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here, and some of these people, I seriously doubt that they are the Christians that they pretend to be, mm-hmm. because that's the thing. They've created these characters, these roles of, I am uber patriot, uber Christian guy, and they may be very charismatic, and that is why people listen to them. And so they just continue to play these roles because it brings in money, and it makes them popular, I guess.
Is it a lot of money?
For some of these people, it is. And I'll tell you, it was a hard decision for me to put this story out. And I did get some recoil from it because, we're not supposed to talk bad about any J6ers. But when we've got these stories coming out that are so obviously BS, it makes us look really stupid to the left when they're sitting there laughing at the picture of the guy in the janitor's closet, like I did the minute I saw it. And we sit there and we say, oh, I can't believe this is America with a K, Yeah,
will you show the picture real quick, Ryan? Again.
We've got to call this out. Because if we're not being honest on our own side, who's going to believe us?
So we've got a picture of a man. I've got the picture up of Ryan that he released. He's laying on a mat of some kind in a very, very small room that's got a bucket and a drain, which is a janitor closet, as you described later on in your piece. He's pretty clean. He doesn't seem to have any surgical scars on his face from where he has supposedly lost an eye, right? And then
yeah, well, the story changed with the eye, because it started out he's blind. You know, his eye was popped out of socket. I mean, the stories were
right.
And at one point in interviewing Ryan, I actually had him say, well, it's really something kind of detached, like in my brain with my eye. I really just need this little surgery. I just can't see very well out of that.
They could just
eye.
put the optic nerve back together. That's fine. There's no big deal there.
Yeah.
So when you start getting these stories, that picture right away for me triggered a bunch of questions. It's like, number one, if you've ever seen anybody who sits in the same room for a period of time, their pants are not clean. The story was that he was thrown in naked, but he's wearing nude colored shorts, which looks like he could have been in dive school with me. We used to wear little, khaki shorts like that. And then he's just sitting there. And so who took the picture and who leaked the picture? And where did it come from?
I legit thought that was real.
I told Ryan this. I told Ryan Matta this, our producer. I said when I saw that photo, I had all these questions because I'm naturally curious, and I'm naturally just a skeptic. That's what makes you an investigator. And you had the same thing. So you start digging into this. Obviously, you found out the guy is getting put up to a story. What's the real story with what's going on in that photo, if you understand it?
Okay, well, so I do believe that maybe something went on in Philly when they had him locked up there. And I think it's important to say that this is the guy who was at the initial breach at the bottom of the stairs at the Capitol, who was wearing a red MAGA hat, and Ray Epps comes over and whispers to him, and Ryan turns his red cap around, which to a lot of people, because we were told, Antifa is going to be wearing MAGA hats backwards. So immediately people think, oh, that must mean he's Antifa.
Mm-hmm.
And could be, but I don't think that's why he turned the hat around.
He
but
could have
anyway,
also just been
made,
like a over the top fan of Sly Stallone, and he just knew that was like flipping the switch, right?
Well, I'll tell you, this is a guy who grew up in the streets of Philly. He's big into street fighting, and he's anyway. That's the kind of guy he is.
Okay.
So if you watch you can see he's getting all wired up. He's ready to go kick some butt. And so that was just one of those moves where he's like, I got to turn the hat around so I can see better, because I'm about to go beat the shit out of these police officers.
Okay, there goes the jacket. That's step one. Hat's on. Now we're in business mode. Ray Epps is going to tell him something. He says, okay, now we all have to get inside the Capitol building. Otherwise, I'm not going to get paid by DHS or whatever he says.
Right.
whatever they've agreed on. So he's not the guys that we're looking at that didn't ever touch the fence or out with a bullhorn saying don't go in there, it's a trap, or some of these other things. He's a different kind of guy. How many buckets of people? I try to sort these people out in my head in kind of general camps. If he's the guy that showed up there to get wild, and maybe that's it, and then now he's doing a prison grift, what do the other camps look like?
You mean just other?
Yeah,
other
just
defendants?
broadly speaking across the spectrum of people who are in the January 6th debacle in jail. I mean, from one end of the spectrum, what's it look like, and what's the far end of the spectrum look like, from left to right boundaries, if you would?
Yeah. So yeah, I don't want to mischaracterize January 6th defendants at all, because in any group of people, you're going to have the bad actors.
For sure, 100%.
We've got some great, incredible people. I mean, we've got Ronald Colt Maccabee, who is a law enforcement officer, a deputy sheriff, who was there in the tunnel where Roseanne Boylan was murdered. And he was trying to save her life. I believe he told the other officers there, I'm a police officer. He was trying to help her. He wanted to give her CPR, and they let him. And I think, they even used some of that footage in the January 6th committee, but they take the audio out, so you can't hear what he is saying. And this guy has been locked up since the beginning, pretty much. And his wife's been out here, Sarah has been out here just fighting for him. It's crazy. It really is, because I really think that he is one of the really good ones.
That's my sense as well. Just the things that I've read and the fact that we've dealt with Sarah a little bit. It would be really, really hard to imagine of another police officer of any kind, somebody in law enforcement, go out and then say, I'm going to condone violence against law enforcement officers because of a political thing that happened. I mean, the line is not that flexible. for any cop I've ever met. I've never thought of a cop that way. And there probably are some out there that are garbage, but it's hard to imagine. So if that's one end of the spectrum, what's the other end of the spectrum look like?
Well, I mean, that's the good end of the spectrum, and then the bad end of the spectrum is Ryan Samsel and the like. So we've got we've got a lot of family men who are locked up. Their families have lost everything. In a lot of these situations, the wives end up leaving, which is very sad because and I think in a lot of these cases it's because that they're not part of the community. And I think that's where we've seen the suicides and these other kind of situations are where the family is not part of the January 6th community, because no one can understand what it's like to go through this except other January 6th families. So I think that's why it's so important for people to come in and become a part of the community.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's the same thing with the military families. If you think about it, if you're not connected to other military wives, if you're not connected to people that are on base and know what's going on and understand the needs, then you're screwed. You're going to be divorced and go find somebody else to live with. But if you can have the support structure of community, then you know that that's how it works, and people get along and they handle all kinds of difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so many of these are vets, it seems like, too. It seems like the vets have kind of know what the game is. Some of them do.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely have a lot of veterans and some law enforcement officers. I mean, it's heavy on that end for the arrests. It really is.
What do you think the overall game is that is being played? But you dealt with the FBI a little bit. You've dealt with the justice system. You've covered a lot of these trials. Like, what's the end goal here?
What's the angle? I think the government's angle is to promote as much fear as possible, and this runs not only on on the prosecution side, but I'm you see it in the courtroom from the judges as well. Judge Kelly went on and on in these Proud Boy sentencings about protecting the government. Which, I couldn't even believe I was hearing that in the courtroom. What
does that even mean?
Exactly. I mean, what about we the people? It's just insane. And that, that we had to set an example. Had to set an example so that people wouldn't do this again. So I think that's what it's all about. And if you look back at history, I mean, this is what they do. I mean, it's the political weaponization. They start putting their enemies in jail, and then scaring everybody. And they don't want us to protest. So they've been quite effective in that. I'll tell you, it's hard to get people to show up for a rally or a protest anymore. People are scared to death. They definitely don't want to do it in D.C. But it's crazy. So they as I kind of got off that track at one point, but I was starting to tell the story of I've done all these interviews, and so my podcast is in everybody's discovery.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, it's great. So I was in a trial about 3 weeks ago, and it was a lunch break on the first day, and I was at the bank of elevators in the courtroom going down for lunch, and the prosecution team walks up behind me, and the prosecutor, I suddenly hear his voice. He says, "It's great to see you in person for the first time, Ms. Hawley."
That's weird.
Kidding me? I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
How many hours have they been pouring over your podcast looking for incriminating evidence?
Exactly.
And that one soundbite that they're going to play out of context or whatever it is they do.
Yeah. And they were messing with me in that trial too, because they didn't actually end up using any of my stuff. But on one of the slides they kept showing, up in the top corner is a little tab open. That's the name of my podcast.
Right. Now tell people what the name of your podcast is, because they're going to be curious. They're going to want to go see that. And I looked at it last night a little bit.
Justice and Jeopardy is my January 6th podcast. I'm Sovereign Souls Media, and so my website is sovsouls.us, and that's where you can find all my work. But
I've got your Substack in the show notes, so people can click on that. And on the top tab of the Substack, the main homepage, there's all the links. It looks like if you hit the website and so on, it should pull those things up, I think.
Great. Thank you.
I went and played with it yesterday. So Soft Souls there. It's got your Twitter. It's got the website, the YouTube thing, and then there's also a list of recent interviews and whatnot. So folks, if you want to see that, that's at least one central thing. I always find that if we try to do 10 or 12 different links, because I know a lot of us are out there in different places, it just one link will drive to all the other links. So if you're curious, it's not going to be very hard for you. People know how to use the internet, I think. I trust my audience with that.
Yeah. Go to my website. You can pretty much find links to find me everywhere. And now and since 1776 Returns was started, that's also where I write articles. So
okay,
definitely check out 1776returns.com.
Yeah, some pretty wild stuff on there. And is that Sean Witzman's thing? He's doing it full time. That's what he's launched up on.
Yes. So he launched that, and Ashton Ritchie and I are his main two writers.
Okay.
But Sean's an incredible journalist. He's got a great sense of humor.
He really does. He's really he's the kind of guy that would have made it in my friend group. I always have like a couple different types of friends. Some friends are like drinking a beer, and some friends are like taking a shot. And he's like drinking a mixed drink. Like, he's strong, but he's got a lot to say at the same time. And that's always really fun. His humor is really dark, which matches my sort of look at the world. And he's very sarcastic, and he's got all this kind of just wry wit, maybe. I don't know. Like, folks, I deal with Sean. Yeah. We text back and forth, and everything we do, it's like texting where someone has deleted every 3 lines. You know what I mean? Like, he assumes that a couple of things, and then he says something that didn't get said. He jumps forward in the conversation and makes you put the other stuff in your head. Sometimes it's clever. It's
exactly. Yeah, he's brilliant. He's a great friend, and he does. I mean, you've got to understand that sense of humor to be friends with him, for sure.
There's a movie called Ronin that I watched. I don't remember if you ever saw this. This was Ronin was with Robert De Niro, and Sean Bean was in it. A couple other really good actors. European film. It was, but I always told people it was like a regular action movie where they had really smart writers, and then they deleted every other line to make it really, really weird and interesting. And so somebody would be like, they'd be like, he's like, "You ever kill anybody?" And then he's like, "I hurt someone's feelings once." It's just like it's really cool guy talk. It's smart, and it's interesting. And somebody would be like, "Were you in the military?" And he's like, "No, I got this job to the New York Times." And you're like, "What?" It's clever, and it's like every time I read Sean's text back and forth, that's what it looks like to me. It's like I missed a line in there that he didn't write it. He's just assuming that I know what was the next step, and then he went 2 steps further beyond that. And some of his writing is that way too. And actually, I saw some of that. I actually thought that Sean wrote that article that you did, and I was actually happy to see that that's what we were talking about here, because I thought he was setting somebody up when we first did the interview. He said I should talk to you, and I was like, oh no, I don't really want to bring people on and hurt their feelings or expose them. And you're the one who's really exposing things there. And so that's fantastic. I'm psyched to talk to you, and I think it's good. Can we? I like to say that it like I said, it was a very hard decision to go ahead and put that story out because I knew I was going to get it was not going to go over well with everybody. But I thought it was important to do, and to be honest, I mean, for people who are suggesting that I somehow was doing it for my own benefit, it makes no sense, because I had to eat crow to put this out and say, I know you guys know I've been advocating hardcore for this guy for a year and a half, but I was deceived, So, it doesn't benefit me in any way. But that is the mark of doing the right thing, right? I mean, that's the thing we're not seeing the government do, it turns out. Just right. No ability to take new facts and realize, oh, you know what? I thought it was this thing, but there's more to it.
Yeah, they're willing to just cover up for each other.
Mm-hmm. I see that too.
Mm-hmm.
It troubles me to no end as someone who worked in there. I feel like they're tarnishing credibility of people who actually did good work. And now everything is suspect because it's really bad work.
Exactly.
This should actually, stories like what you just did should actually make you more legitimate, even if it hurts feelings inside the camp. And it's one of the reasons why I like Sean when we talk, because he said, I have a very nuanced view of things. There is no black and white in this. There's some good guys. There's some bad guys. There's some sort of good guys. There's some sort of bad guys that did some good things, like life is. It's just not, it's not headlines. We don't live in headline world.
Yeah. And I think so many people think that we're going to figure it out. I've figured it out. This is what it was that day, or this is what it was. And no, this was just a huge pot of craziness. I mean, we had so many different things going on, so many different people coming from so many different angles. We had undercovers from every single alphabet soup that you can imagine. And we had government, we had Pelosi doing stuff and Pence doing stuff. I mean, they were all involved. And I see the same thing from the defendants. I work for John Pierce Law as well.
Okay.
So I get to see a lot of this from the inside, from the legal side too. And all of these defendants, they think they've found the magic bullet that's going to win their case.
Right.
And that is going to be the one. And it's not like that. It doesn't work that way at all.
Everybody, I call it like an idolatry almost. It's like one person is going to save us. One narrative is going to be the thread of truth that weaves everything together. There's a movie. This is another movie. I used to watch a lot of detective movies, and one of them is called Daryl Zero, or it's called Zero Effect. It's about a guy named Daryl Zero. Nobody knows it, but it was the precursor to the show House MD, which is based on Sherlock Holmes. Okay. And Ben Stiller is kind of the Watson character. He's the assistant, and he's yelling at Bill Pullman, who plays the main character. And he goes, "It's not a world of good guys and bad guys. It's just a bunch of guys." and I always hear that bouncing around in my head when people tell me, it's like, I figured it out. I've cracked the case. The case is not crackable because it's so many. There's a million cases, and everybody had a different story going in there. And I think that's what's really important about what you've been revealing. And more importantly, it's what's important about the way that you're willing to say, look, this was a con, and we can all be conned. I think that's really important for journalists too.
Yeah. And I think it is important to remember that when it comes down to it, we're talking about people whose constitutional rights have been infringed. And if we let this go on, they're coming for us all. I've been saying that for the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand, even if you're, you've got terrible TDS and you just think it was an insurrection, whatever. If you don't see that there's political weaponization going on, and that these people really are political hostages, and that Merrick Garland just, it's crazy that he's still going on with this. Almost 3 years later, he's still doing this. You're in for a world of hurt going forward because, they're coming for us all.
There's an energy in this country on both sides right now that it's barely bridled. So do you mind prognosticating a little bit? I'm going to throw the scenario out and you tell me how it ends, because I think there's only a couple of ways this thing goes in the next little bit. One of them is that Trump wins the primary and he doesn't win the general. How does that look in America?
Well, I'm afraid he's gonna win from inside prison. To be honest,
it's certainly a possibility.
But
real possibility.
Yeah, we're kind of going. But if he wins the primary and doesn't win the general, then I don't know what we're going to do.
Can anybody on the political right, or the people that are in the J6 camp, can they accept that that's a legitimate loss, you think?
I don't think most of America who plans to vote for Trump will consider that that's even a possibility. I think at that point that, I think we're going to have some people who just give up and give in, and they're like, okay, we completely lost our country. There's nothing we can do. And then, I'm not sure if we're going to have people who go as far as taking to arms. What's this going to look like? I really don't know.
So then the next possibility is that he doesn't win the primary and, of course, isn't in the general. And then what?
And
that may be because he's in a jail cell, too. I think that's the possibility that happens.
So I really think if we can't win in 2024, then I think we have lost our country. I really do.
Okay. And then here's the thing that I think is also troubling, because I look at all this stuff. I'm not a Trump guy, although he got my vote the second time around for sure. And, he would get my vote. Anybody is better than what we got going right now. He's just not somebody that I see as the solution to all these things. Mostly, I just don't like really old people in office at this point. But we're in kind of this unusual circumstance. So imagine Trump wins the primary, wins the general. And what happens to this energy that has been steamrolling people from the other side, and also the mechanisms of government that are part of it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the other side if we go that direction, because they are already so upset. They're so triggered. They're so and to have him back in the office would just I think we do have selections, not elections, and I kind of feel like the powers that be are gonna put in a Republican. Somehow, I think that's their plan. And I think they're kind of sticking different people in a little bit. I think they see that DeSantis is not going to be the one. So they just keep trying different people. You'll have Pence come out and talk. I mean, that's got to be the biggest joke in the world. But
you don't want to elect a robot?
Oh my gosh. And but they're going to do everything they can to make sure it's not Trump, and that's why they've indicted him. That's why they're going after him, because they're going to do everything they can to keep him out of office. So I just don't know.
It's just such a bizarre, volatile time. And then, of course, my buddies tell me that there's a real possibility that we have no election at all, that it just that they shut it down for some reason.
Yeah.
Are people in the J6 camp talking about these potential forks in the road in front of them and what that might mean for them?
No, I don't know that we've had a lot of talk about that, but I think it's something that we do need to talk about for sure.
Because all those outcomes are they're going to have big implications for all their cases, I think.
Yeah, that's really, I think most people have accepted the reality that that's really the only way that we're going to get these people out. We know we can't win in the courtroom, and I implore people to come sit in on these trials, because these courtrooms are empty. I mean, even for the Proud Boys, the courtroom was not full. It's crazy. I mean, these are historical events, and play a huge role in what our future looks like. And people are not, all you have to do is come to the courthouse, come on in there and listen, because it's crazy. I mean, the jury selection. Wow. That's crazy. I'll tell you one story. I was sitting through a jury selection that went on for a couple of days. And, it was one candidate after another coming up to the stand, and the judge going through the voir dire, the questioning. She would say, did you live or work near the Capitol on January 6th? And most of them, yes. And these people they all worked for the government, because that's who lives in DC.
Right.
So we've got Homeland Security. We've had a J6 federal prosecutor that they tried to sneak on. But anyway, they were coming up to the same one after another, and they'll openly admit, I'm far left leaning politically. And the judges get so frustrated that they can't find anybody that might be suitable to sit on this jury. So they start trying to talk him into it. You can overlook that, can't you? You can look beyond your political feelings, and can't you? You can. I know you can. So this was going on one after, and then they're mostly like, you've got the young white liberals, and you've got the older white liberals, and then we had a woman come to the stand. She was a black woman. I would guess she was probably in her early 60s, and the judge says, did you live or work near the Capitol on January 6th. And she says, well, yes, I was there. And the judge said, what were you doing there? And she said, well, I was there to use my free speech to protest against a stolen election.
How'd that go?
The judge was just in shock, So because she had let so many other, politically far-leaning left people on, she had to allow this woman to be on the jury. But of course, the government struck her down. I think that was their first strike. Yeah, no, she's not. But as she exited the courtroom and she walked by us in the gallery, and we all said, "God bless you." And the prosecutor, I mean, if you use the word God in these courtrooms, they flip out. And we said it quietly just as she walked by us. But the prosecutor is, oh, Your Honor, they're talking to the jury. And so the judge had to,
clear the
tell
room or
us
something?
that we couldn't tamper with the jury.
Yeah, stop tampering with the jury with a basic blessing that happens for everybody who sneezes in America.
Yes. Yes.
Even people that don't believe in God say that.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, we are.
So it's in these trials, and I think everyone should do it.
Well, if you're in the area, definitely take a day. It's a vacation that you will probably be able to see something that you can tell your grandkids about how strange it is, I'm sure. Speaking about being in the courtroom, you were in the courtroom yesterday with Owen. Is that true?
I was not in the courtroom. I arrived when he was done, and he was outside giving a presser right when I walked up. So I'm going to put something out today that I did yesterday on that. That was fantastic. I mean, he stood out there and talked to us for like an hour. But he said what I've been saying this whole time is these are First Amendment cases, every single one of them. And his absolutely is, because they have been listening to everything he said for the past 5 years, every word that he has said. And he didn't even go inside, and they're giving him 60 days. I mean, he stood out there with Alex Jones, who was doing the most of the talking, who was telling people not to go inside. And they're going after him. They're going after him hard.
Did you hear what Alex was saying for all of it, or was it anywhere near where you guys were at?
No, I was not near Alex Jones on that day. So I didn't hear what he was saying, but from what I've heard, that's what he was saying from other people who have listened to him. He was telling people not to go inside.
Yeah, it's crazy. I called Owen yesterday and gave him my, if there's anything we can do to help him, I want to. I don't know what it'll be, but it is amazing to think that we are going to jail journalists, and he would not be the first one. I mean, obviously, Sean went to, had to plead guilty, and a lot of these guys have gone through, people who were there for professional purposes who did or didn't, people who didn't even enter the building were getting hit with it. And it seemed like Steve Baker's story to me. I don't know. I'm sure you know of Steve Baker. Mm-hmm. His story is, it just depends on how you covered it. If you put it out there and said the terrible, awful, no good, very bad Trump Republicans were there, then your story is okay and your coverage is fine. And if you didn't, then they come after you. To me, that's shocking. Mm-hmm. I keep telling people this, and it's a soundbite, but it rings really true. The America that I grew up in would invade the America I live in.
Right.
Like, when did we flip over and become a tyrannical, lunatic, fringe government that is acting like a banana republic? When do you think that turnover was?
I think COVID moved it along pretty quickly, to be honest. But just even Trump coming into office, I think when Hillary didn't win, they started panicking, and they're like, let's turn this up. Let's put the pedal to the floor. We gotta move this forward.
That may be the case. I think people that tell me about the FBI say 2015, 2016 was a breaking point. And of course, I came in at 2016. So what do I know? All I knew was what was going on, and they'd already decided to surveil a presidential campaign and lie on a FISA application. So yeah, it's such a crazy thought coming up, respecting an organization, going to work for it, and then getting inside of it and seeing it being the opposite. I want to ask one more question. This may be kind of a tough one to dig into. Jake Lang has reached out to me in the same way that you were talking about, multiple different phone numbers, text messages from not the same phone, and apparently does a podcast from inside the DC jail. You have a read on what Jake Lang's about that you're willing to talk to?
Yeah, no comment.
That makes as much sense as anything else. I'll comment on it on my thoughts later. Then that'll be fine. That's not my my concern. But I did. Yeah, it says what it is. All right, folks. I don't want to dig any deeper, and I definitely don't want to put you in the hole with the people that you're reporting on. If you have interest in people who are defending themselves against J6 on the spectrum that goes from bad and nefarious actors grifting a lot of money to people who are probably some of the worst political prisoners in the United States at this point, you can definitely check out Mel's stuff, and her things are down. Her social and her website are down in our show notes. I'm pointing downward. You can't see Mel, but that's what I'm doing to where the show notes are. Anything that you'd like to leave as a parting message for people, and you have any hope that you've seen coming out of any of this?
I think one of the biggest struggles we have is being able to fund this. The left just seems to have as much money as they need. As we saw when they were bailing people out who were just getting, a slap on the wrist and a $50 ticket.
Mm-hmm.
But these cases are not, they're not easy to fight, and they take a lot of time, and we've got quite a few, not as many as we need, attorneys who are really fighting hard and who are doing this for, pretty much nothing. I mean, barely getting by, taking on so many cases. And we really do need help on that end to fight these in the courtroom, because even if we're not going to win these, cases that we've got right now, I think we have a really good chance of winning them in appeals. And some of these are going to have to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So, please do donate to help these attorneys, these law firms, and you can either go directly to their Gives and Goes, and you can find links to those. There should be a link on my website, I think, to where you can find some of those. But just go to Gives and Go and search for January 6th, or if you watch my episodes, I always link their Gives and Goes, and these are to help their legal funds. And as well, I mean, these people, they're losing everything. They're having a hard time just keeping, a roof over their head for their families back home and food in the pantry. And you can also go to nclu.org, and you can give there directly to the John Pierce Law Fund to help us, keep this going. So let me make sure I gave that right. I think it's NCLU.
You said nclu.org?
nclu.org. So kind of like ACLU, but not.
Yeah.
NCLU.
National, but not interested in left-wing fascism.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is they are.
The National Law Union.
Mm-hmm.
So,
National Constitutional Law Union. Okay.
Yeah, just get involved. I mean, because like I said, they're coming for us all. So if we're not fighting for these people, it's going to be hard in the long run.
It is going to be hard, I think, either way. But I appreciate that you're out there reporting on it. I appreciate that you joined us this morning to speak with us. And sorry we had some tech difficulties, but I'm glad we worked out. I like this phone option, too, as a backup. This is the audio is great, and I think people can walk away and hear exactly what you had to say. And, I could do it that way, too. In fact, I'm not always sure why I have to have a video podcast, but it is a thing out there, and it definitely gives us access to Rumble. So thanks for joining us. People, you can support Mel. And, yeah.
Thanks for all you do, and thanks for doing the right thing. I really appreciate you having me on. It's quite an honor, Kyle.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for making the time. We will have more guests like this, folks. If you liked what you heard, by all means, share this stuff. Make sure you are liking it on Rumble. That is my new job. I say things like that instead of telling people that I come from the FBI. It's kind of a weird world that I live in here. But we do stream the show live from Liberty Hill, Texas at 9:30 Eastern Time, 8:30 Central. It is a live show, so sometimes it has all the fun of a live show, which is to say connection issues. Thanks for sticking around for all of that. Folks, you can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Seraphin, or you can go to the link in our description and leave us a 5-star review on Apple, and we really appreciate when you guys do. This one's review comes in from K Mage, saying, awesome Patriot 5-star. Kyle, thank you for all you're doing to point out the false idols of this world and help redirect us to the truth. We all need to educate our friends who are lost in the world and to see the bigger meanings of life and community based in God. Well, I 100% agree with that, and I am very grateful that you liked our idolatry episode. It's something we should all be real cautious of, and people like Garrett O'Boyle have been out there keeping me honest and aware and paying attention to the biblical significance of the spiritual battle that I think we're all in. And people like Mel Hawley, my guest today, are in that spiritual battle. They're out there trying to give you the truth. You got to figure it out for yourself. You got to go out there and read and listen to what is being said and make some good discerning things and pray about them for sure. Folks, you can follow this show on the video channel, which is rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, or you can share it on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and so on. And by all means, leave us a 5-star review. We will read yours. I want to say thanks to the hard work of Ryan Matta, who was out there working in the background, making sure this thing was coming together. And we do want to thank all of our sponsors. If you do need any of the things that are listed there, if you want to get information, go to Catholic Vote. If you want to get a tumbler or a hard cooler or something like that, check out Patriot Coolers. And if you want that merch, it's the-suspendables.com. You can tell that I'm starting to glitch too. I might have some Mitch McConnell in me today. The-suspendables.com for Garrett O'Boyle stuff, and it supports the Suspendables. Folks, we will see you again tomorrow. And tomorrow is Thursday, so that means I'm going to be talking to Mike Benz about the CIA getting involved in the messaging campaigns and CIA cutouts. Don't miss that. Definitely stick around for Mike Benz tomorrow. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful day, and y'all be safe. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.